Celebrating Values with Brian Phillips. Hi, I'm Brian Phillips, and welcome to Celebrating Values. Today, my guest is Dr. Zeena Shelal. Zeena is a medical researcher at a major hospital in Houston. In February, Zeena's husband, Sam, and her two children were all diagnosed with COVID. The children didn't exhibit very severe symptoms and recovered, but her husband's condition started to deteriorate. And in mid-February, mid to late February, she took him to the emergency room and he wound up being admitted to the hospital. His condition continued to deteriorate, and in early March, Zeena was told that he was very critical and he may not survive. 8 days later, he was discharged from the hospital, and that's what I will talk to Zeena about today. Hi, Zeena. Thanks for talking with me today.
Hi, Brian. How are you?
Good. Why don't we begin with you kind of walking us through how your ordeal started. When was Sam first diagnosed with COVID, or when did you suspect he might have COVID?
We actually, it all started early February when my son's school closed for less than a week. Then my son went back to school on Thursday. He came back with fever, and my husband coworkers, all of them also diagnosed with COVID. So we started to take precautions that week, the first week of February. In general, all masked up at home, separated before even my son started having symptoms. My husband didn't show any symptoms, but all his coworkers, like diagnosed with COVID, they were home. So we weren't sure what's going on. Then my son diagnosed with COVID. I took him to the doctor. We did the test and he tested positive. We continued our precautions. Everyone in their room, everything separated, cleaned extra. Then I didn't send the boys to school, of course. And on Tuesday, the 9th, my husband started to have some sneezing and little achy nose, and he didn't go to work, of course, and did the test, and he, sure enough, tested positive.
Okay. So you have two sons or one son?
Two.
Were both of them positive for COVID?
Both of them positive for COVID. The second one didn't show symptoms, and even when it was only 1 day of fever, and same, like we did the test and he tested positive.
Okay, but you never tested positive?
I never tested positive. I never showed any symptoms. I was fully vaccinated on January 28th. I took my second shot. Okay.
So, well, that's interesting, and that's good evidence that the vaccines might be working.
Possible, yeah, definitely. Encouraging too.
Yeah, I mean, you had 3 people in your household who tested positive, and you didn't.
I didn't show any symptoms.
So when did Sam go in the hospital then?
It was he started with very light symptoms. We called his primary. They started him on nebulizer when he started coughing. We did have very difficult communication with them, not returning our call. They didn't started him on any of the new protocols like steroids or combination steroid with antibiotics. It was just difficult to communicate with them. Unfortunately, not his actual primary, the backup we talked to. Then I talked to them over the phone, and they told me once his saturation goes down less than 90, you have to take him to the hospital. So I continued to monitor his saturation. His symptoms were not bad at all, except like he started to develop very bad cough and started to show some pneumonia symptoms later that week. So he started on Tuesday. On Thursday, his symptoms start to get worse. Friday the same, and the storm hit us, the winter storm.
Oh,
So we lost electricity, we lost water, like millions of other people around. And unfortunately, that didn't help with no nebulizer, no access to medication. I wasn't able to get his refill. All pharmacies were closed. And he continued like to just in general, okay-ish, not really, like his saturation continued to be 94, 93. On Monday, it started to get so cold, and of course, we still without power, and his cough started to get worse. Tuesday, his saturation started to go down, and that was day 8 after his diagnosis. And I thought the device isn't working because he was going around the house, helping out, just okay-ish. Not great as he usually is, but like his symptoms started to resolve actually. And we thought it's over and just a little cough. I thought that the spirometer doesn't work. So I ran to the closest store, got a new spirometer. I checked his, I'm sorry, oximeter, his oxygen level, I apologize. I checked his oxygen level, it was at 84. So it was the decision. All roads were just slippery, snow, ice everywhere. But decision made, we decided to go to the hospital. Of course, with all closed, all roads closed, we made it to the closest hospital to us, closest emergency. And of course, that when the issues started to get worse, the first thing, they took him from me. They didn't allow me to even be with him in the emergency room. I had to let him in and just wait in the car. They told me maybe a couple hours. I actually waited there more than 3 hours. Then I kept going back and forth, checking and asking if possible to either see him or just to know where we're at and if they allow me to be with him or take him home on a prescription. Because he went to the hospital walking okay. He was making jokes with the nurses. He was just fine symptom-wise. But of course, his body was telling us something with his oxygen going down. And we decided, like, they told me they don't think he'll be home today. He will spend a couple days in the hospital. And that's when I went home and let him in the hospital. But since then, all the issues started with not being able to know what's going on, no communications. They only counted on him having his cell phone to tell me what's going on. His cell phone died, lost contact with him maybe a day or so. Less than a day, I showed to the hospital again, and it's like, I need to talk to him. I need to see what's going on. He was still in the emergency because of full capacity in that hospital. They weren't able to provide room, which is like many other patients, unfortunately. All I knew, he was on a device called Vapotherm, high flow oxygen. And they already started him. They did some CT scans, and they did some, of course, labs. And they started him on steroid, antibiotics, and the high flow oxygen. He started around the 80%, 40 liters or 35 liters. Then the max of the device, 100%. And when I actually went to the emergency, dropped off a charger, so he charged his phone. And when I talked to him, that was day 2 plus, like 2.5 days in the emergency. He was already on 100% Vapotherm and 40 liters of oxygen, which is the max of that device. And he was told like he has COVID pneumonia, which goes with his symptoms. And his saturation was, they weren't able to keep his saturation of oxygen in the 90s without the Vapotherm. He was still okay, a little laughing, talking. He wasn't sure when he will be discharged. And days started to get over and over continuously, like no communication. After a couple days, he was admitted to the hospital, and We were assured like when he's in the hospital, he'll have his own like nurse, communication will improve in the emergency, as we all know, and like too many patients, number of nurses are not enough to contact family members. But after 3 or if I'm not mistaken, 4 days until he get into a room, we started, like I started to call regularly. It's like, hey, I'm just checking on Sam. He's in room XYZ. Can you please like let me know what's his situation? And I didn't get any clear picture. All I got, he is very high risk of intubation. His situation is very critical, and that was it. I requested to talk to the primary. No one returned my calls. I requested to talk to the pulmonologist. No calls at all. Few days after, on a Sunday, which he's been like in the hospital almost a week since Tuesday. So on a Sunday, I picked the phone. The nurse told me that he's very critical. She didn't return my call until like 5 p.m., which was, I call every day around after the morning round to give them time to check on their patients and see what's the situation. So around 9:30, 10 a.m. every day. No return until 5 p.m. or maybe even after. And she told me they asked him to prone. He doesn't want to prone. And they told me literally, we threat him to intubate him. And I said, what do you mean you threat him? And they said, well, we want him to feel better. We want him to get out of the hospital, and that's what you all want. And he's not cooperating. And I said, what do you mean he's not cooperating with you? I can talk to him. I want to understand, like, this is not what we're talking about. And she said, no, he's finally proning. Proning is sleeping on the tummy to help the lungs open up towards the gravity. So I picked the phone and I asked her, please let me talk to him. I talked to him and he said, no, actually they asked me, but it's uncomfortable. I have IV lines. I have the vapotherm, which is like a big nasal cannula, and the bed wasn't very comfortable. So I asked them to situate me like really in a comfortable situation so I can prone. It's not like I'm refusing. And they told me I have to be intubated. And I said, I don't want to be intubated. So I asked her, can I please talk to the pulmonologist? I want to understand if his situation is really like to the point that we need to make the decision. And I understand he's high risk of intubation with his, with what he told me, like with his lungs are not cooperating. They told him his CT scan wasn't clear. It's all it's all inflamed because of the COVID pneumonia. So finally, a pulmonologist, which is a backup, not the primary pulmonologist, talked to me, and he talked to me, and it's like, that's all we can do. And I said, it has to be something else we're missing on. He's been almost a week in the hospital, no improvement. I was told couple days, is there anything I can do? And he said, just talk to him, let him cooperate with us. I talked to my husband and he said, I'm doing everything they're asking me. I don't know what you're talking about. And I said, are you okay? Do you breathe okay? And he said, yeah, but of course, in the hospital, I don't sleep. They wake you up every few minutes to check on you. And I said, that's okay. You'll have plenty of time to sleep when you go home. Do you prone? And he said, yeah. And actually, the primary told me I'm one of his best patients, listening and doing the proning and getting my meds. So I was confused on Sunday. On Monday, I talked to case management and the patient advocacy. I called patient advocacy and I asked them, I need someone to talk to. I need the primary to talk to. I need the pulmonologist. I want a nurse to call me and let me know. I'm a family member. I need to see my husband. And they told me, well, if the patient is alerted and not delirious and not confused, usually we talk to the patient and we don't communicate with family members. And that kind of like And I said, well, even if they are COVID patients, they don't know what's going on. And I kept reminding everyone, my husband is young, never been in a hospital. He never needed a physician unless it's for primary visit every year, just the annual checkups. And he is athletics, he's a runner, he's a weightlifter. So it must be shocking for him to be bedridden in the hospital with so many IV lines and so many people coming back and forth and in and out without knowing what's going on. And everyone is telling you it's a deadly virus, but you don't know if you will survive it or not. So
it sounds like you're about 10 days into this.
about.
And it sounds like you haven't been able to see him yet.
No way to see him. And when I called case management and called advocacy, they linked me to case management and they said, we are still under zero policy. There is no way we make excuse to let you see him. And I actually brought up, I said, I'm fully vaccinated. I have my vaccination card. And I looked up online with their policy, and in the policy of the hospital, it says on a case-by-case basis. And I'm a case that requesting to see my husband. And they said, no, that's not the guidelines. We cannot let you see him. So I pulled the CDC and I said, per the CDC guidelines, patients are not anymore like infectious after 10 days. And hospitalized COVID patients max 20 days. And usually you remove the precaution infectious sign on their rooms. So they said, well, yeah, and that's actually from the day of diagnosis, not the admission. So my husband was very close to actually discharged to a regular room. And they said, no, he's in intermediate unit, which is one step less than ICU. And we're still under zero policy. So 10 days plus, no communication, no way to talk to physicians. And that day, primary physician called me and the pulmonologist called me after I talked to case management. And case management advised me if I don't get hold of them to call case management and they will link me to them. I didn't get any positive idea from them or like, we're doing what we can do. And maybe that's right. Maybe it's true. We're doing what we can do. He's on 100% vapotherm. He's on 40 liters oxygen. He is very high risk of intubation. And there's nothing we can do. And I've requested is there any way we can transfer him to another hospital? Is there anything we're missing on? Is there anything I can do? Can I see him? None of that fly, unfortunately. We were already, they said like, that's what we can do. He still have a few days of steroid, antiviral medication, antibiotic stopped by then. And we'll try to call you. If you need anything, let us know. We understand, all nice words, but no assuring thing. And I left the call from them like I started it. No outcome, basically.
So when were you finally able to actually see him in person?
In person, actually February, end of February, I talked to the nurse and she said, let me talk to one of the nurses. And there are people who went the extra miles. So she said, let me talk to the nurses management. And this is not something I can decide. So I talked to case management again and patient advocacy on a Saturday and Sunday. And Sunday evening, they told me maybe tomorrow you can see him. And that was March 1st. So Monday morning I called and I said, hey, they told me there is a potentially I can see him today. And is it still the case? And during the morning round, my husband and we figured a way to communicate with the physicians, and he started to record, voice record what they tell him, and they he send it to me. And unfortunately, he was on a lot of medication, sedative medication that he's sometimes he can't even. And they talk to him terminology like he's it's not his specialty, so sometimes he can't even know what's next for him. So he started to send me those recording, and during that morning recording, the physician told him, "We heard that your wife would like to come and visit you, and you want her here. Is that correct?" And I didn't tell him anything. I didn't want to hold his hopes and then put him down for not being there. But I was doing like the background, like work, which trying to get in. So he asked me, "Are you coming today?" And I said, "I'm trying, but nothing yet." And he said, "Oh, that's what I figured because it's still zero policy. I asked for it." And I said, "Yeah." And I just showed up in the hospital and I said, "I think they let me in." I showed up in the hospital to the front desk and I asked, and I told them, I talked to the nurses and they told me I can't see my husband today. And it seems like his physician told him that he can see me today. And we were already exactly 20 days from the day of the diagnosis, which per the guidelines of the CDC, he's no longer infectious. He's no longer passing the disease. And they called the unit and they asked them to give me the wristband and let me in. I didn't even know where is the unit. So I went, I asked them, "Where is the unit?" And I went and the nurses stopped me like in the front. They asked me why I'm here. And I said, "I can visit my husband today and I'm going to visit him. I'm gonna see him." And so they told me, "Okay, let's take you to the room." They checked the record. It seems like in the notes, it says I can see him. So we went to the room and to our way there, the nurse told me, "We have so many patients, his situation, unfortunately, it's like full and all the rooms are, and we have patients in the emergency, all the same situation. They end up with intubation. After intubation, 1 out of like at every 10 patients, only 1 survive or about that number." So nothing was encouraging to go to his room. And he said, "We have patients, they spend months and months in here." So I looked to the nurse and they weren't like his nurse of the day, but they said they took care of him a few days ago. I looked to the nurse and I said, "This is not my husband. We're gonna be out in no time." So he laughed and he said, "Yeah, I like how positive you are. The disease is really," and I said, "Yeah, I understand. The disease is horrible. It's terrible. It's new. We don't know, but we'll do our best. We have to."
So you finally got to see him.
I finally got to see
And
him.
what did you discover then?
When I looked, he's in the unit, in the intermediate unit, you have windows. So I looked at first from the window and I honestly was confused if he was my husband or someone else. He looked completely different. And I went into the room and I started talking to him. And he said, "Is this Z?" That's what he calls me. And I said, "Yeah, this is me. You already forget about me?" And he said, "No, I can't see you in clear picture, but I recognized your voice." And I said, "I'm finally here." And first thing he asked me, "Please keep your mask on. I don't want you to get sick." And I said, "Don't worry, I'm okay. I didn't get it when you were home. I'm not getting it here." We took a picture and I looked at, like, we took selfie and I put back my mask per the guidelines. I followed all the instructions they told me about. And I started like looking at his body and how he looks, and he is like weightlifter. So you see like the muscles and his shoulders and his face. And that when it was really shocking, really shocking. He lost tons of weight, and it was scary to see him completely changed. He didn't look him, and he was so weak, not the way that he was walking to the hospital on his own and laughing. He looked weak. He looked not sure what's going on. He looked kind of like really when I can go home. That was his question. And I said, we'll figure it out. We'll see where we're at.
So you said that he couldn't see you?
He said he can see the shape, but he can't recognize, like he can't see clearly.
And what caused to that?
To my understanding, it's a lot of sedative medication and anti-anxiety medication. When I called the nurse that day and I wanted to see what medication my husband was on, because I looked into the labels of the meds on that going into like the drip, into his IV, and one of them actually a medication that we use to intubate patients when they are intubated. So it's very strong, and for a person who never used medication in his life, it could be even stronger. And my husband was 24/7 on that medication, and for already almost 2 weeks.
Why did they have him on anti-anxiety medication?
I wasn't sure why. When I asked my husband, I started to investigate what's going on and why he was on that heavy medication, and he was on 2 of them. They told me he developed lots of anxiety, he's anxious, and I said it can be related to the very high dose of steroid he's on. It can be related to the situation in the hospital itself. But then when my husband and I talked about it, it was more of, can you make me comfortable in my bed? Calling the nurse more than they used to be called, I guess, asking them to help him get off the bed or help him to situate himself and sleep, or asking them that he's uncomfortable, asking them what's going on with me. So it is unfortunate that we still try to let the patient sleep so they don't ask us questions. I actually wonder why he was on that high medication. It's heartbreaking. It is.
Yeah, it almost sounds like like you said, they just wanted him to sleep, and so he wouldn't bug them.
That's what I felt, and because he never brought up issue. They asked me a couple times before when I called the nurses checking on him, does he have anxiety? It's like, no, he never had anxiety. He never had issues. And they asked me he's asking us and he's uncomfortable. And I said, absolutely. For someone never been in the hospital, just being in a hospital bed is uncomfortable. And like simple questions like the pumps in his legs to prevent the clots. If he asked, like, this is the patient right to ask to adjust or remove it or put it on. Unfortunately, all of that was taken like, oh, he's demanding, he asked a lot, and we just want him to sleep and comfortable. It's like, nah, that wasn't the situation.
Yeah, they weren't keeping you informed. They weren't keeping him informed.
None of that.
That had to be incredibly frustrating for both of you. Okay, you said he lost a lot of weight. Was that because of the disease, or was there something else that was causing that?
I think it was a combination of things. The disease itself caused high metabolism, and patients lose appetite, lose smell, and lose taste. So they decrease their food in general, and they start to lose weight. But one of the things I found out when I went to the hospital, one of the questions is like, do you have diabetes? And I said, my husband doesn't have diabetes. He answered the same, I don't have diabetes. And when I looked into his, I wanted to order his lunch, and I looked and I said, this is not a full menu. This is a diabetic patient menu. So again, I called the nurse and I said, hey, I just want to talk to the dietitian. The dietitian came and she said, oh, he's listed as diabetic patient. And I said, that's not true. He is not. And he lost like considerable amount of weight. He looked different. I'm very concerned. So she said, yeah, we put him on diabetic diet since he was admitted to the hospital. That's already 2 weeks. And of course, he's bedridden and cannot move from his bed. So that also contributes to losing muscle weight and losing weight. The diet itself and the disease. So combination of things, he lost almost 40 pounds.
Wow.
That's when, yeah, about. So I requested to change his diet to double protein, full diet, and stopped like I called the nurse again and asked to correct his chart to change it from diabetic patients to regular. And we started changing his diet the day off, the same day I saw him, March 1st.
So what was his oxygen level at this point? You said it was, had been in the 90s when he was at home, but then it dropped into the mid 80s?
About mid 80s when he was admitted, but with full flow of oxygen on Vapotherm. It was in the 90s again, and that was one of the issues and the concerns I had. They never tried, or they tried a couple times dropping the amount down. So usually what you have to try to do is to try to decrease the amount of oxygen, decrease the flow until the patient can breathe on their own and keep the same level of saturation. 2 weeks of 100% oxygen, 40 liters, huge amount of oxygen, 24/7, and to keep his saturation, which I understand to help the lungs. But during those 2 weeks, they didn't try decreasing them, like the Vapotherm to a little lower flow, like 90% or 70%. It was only 1 day. And they told me his oxygen saturation dropped really low. When I talked to my husband and he said, that's not true. When I move or I eat, it dropped, which is expected, but wasn't low to the like critical, like I still can't breathe. I didn't develop cough. So I don't know if they were afraid of lowering it down or taking the risk. That day, I requested from the pulmonology team to decrease it to at least 90%. And we started to try lower flow, same amount of oxygen, same day.
And then what happened?
I was allowed to stay a few hours. We changed the diet. I of course, like started to, he kept like telling me when I was home, I have back pain and lower back pain. And I said, maybe it's just discomfort from sitting in the bed. And he said, I'm proning, but sometimes I sit in the bed too. So let me look. And when I looked, unfortunately, I found some bed sores. So I said, well, honey, you have bed sores, which means some ulcers in your back. That's what's giving you the pain. Again, called, made adjustments, asked for infection and wound service to check him out. They gave him some sort of cream. We started to do that. Of course, like there are simple things like changing the sheets. They don't change it every day, every other day. The patient's gown, unless like he asked, while we're supposed to change it as many times as the patient would like. That's what I thought. There are like really simple things they didn't maybe pay attention to, but we started to, that day we kind of like made some like some changes, like, okay, let's lower the oxygen, please stop or decrease. And of course, with high dose of anti-anxiety and sedative medication, it has to be gradual. We started to decrease the dose. We cut it to half, both medication. And we started to watch his oxygen. And we kind of like, we of course worked on his diet. So that day I left, I felt a little more comfortable. He didn't FaceTime us and the boys in long time. And sometimes he tried, but he get like really caught with his cough or discomfort and he stopped the call. He never wanted the boys to see him and not in his, like in his health and his full health. That day he FaceTimed me the minute I arrived home, and he was talking to me and to the boys. He talked to the cats. He sounded a lot better already. And I asked him to put the camera on his saturation. His saturation was really good in 95 plus. And I started to see him after that. I requested to see him every day, and I started to be with him every day.
So it sounds like there was a dramatic change in a very short period of time, just cutting back his medication, changing his diet, making him comfortable.
I think making him comfortable was the number one, and communicating with him, telling him what's going on. What helped him a lot. That's how I feel. I didn't change the main medication or the steroid or the antivirus. He was already off them when I arrived to the hospital. All I did is just the common sense things, just making him comfortable.
Well, yeah, it's common sense to you. I'm not sure if a layman would have, picked up on all that. But so he started improving right away, it sounds like.
Right away. Day 2, we already started to drop the oxygen even more. We went down to 75% or so, and we started to decrease the oxygen amount from 40 liters to 35 liters. And actually, day 2, when on day 3, the same, pretty much the same, decreased more and decrease the flow more. A pulmonologist came on the morning round. I was there, and what they said, every day we grouped and we asked what else we can do. We never thought in a couple days this will happen. It's dramatic, positive change, or what everybody told me afterward, it's miraculous. I think it was again combination of things, just figuring out without your muscles in your chest you cannot breathe, without having comfortable situation and sitting in your bed comfortably you cannot breathe, with a lot of tons of sedative medication which they affect the lung in one way or another, you cannot breathe. Just making those simple, and if you're in pain and you don't know what's going on, just figuring out this pain, removing the cause, it will relieve you and will make you focus on the main reason you want to be discharged in a better health. In a few days that I started on like the March 1st to see him. On March 6th, it was my husband's birthday, and I went to the hospital with cake and balloons, and actually he was sitting in the chair. He was already sitting in the chair.
Now, you said he'd never been in the hospital and rarely went to the doctor. So, this had to just totally turned his world upside down. I mean, it's bad enough to have COVID, but then to be bedridden and not being informed and not being able to really communicate with you, or at least see you in person. I imagine that when you were able to finally see him, that was a huge morale booster for him.
Absolutely. And actually, he was already off Vapotherm on his birthday. The day I saw him, like, he didn't even know to use his spirometer, which is the lung exercise. It's very important device to open your lungs. The morale itself, it's like, hey, you always figure out things. Why you didn't look up, for example, a YouTube video to see? And he said, well, the team came to me, they showed me, but I don't know how to use it. And I said, there are many techniques to use it. Let's just figure out one of them. We made jokes, we laughed, we said by his birthday we'll be home, and my son's birthday on the 18th. And we thought his birthday is a very close deadline, we can't make it. Then we thought, you know what? You're a fighter, you're gonna be home for our son's birthday. And he was standing, walking without oxygen that day, on my son's birthday. And on his birthday himself, like, he was happy. We called the family on FaceTime. We celebrate. We sang happy birthday. It's just um, caring people around you, listening to you, listening to your concerns, letting you know you're okay, you're gonna make it. You just need to take this med or sleep this way or just walk little bit by little bit again, and you'll be there. You'll be yourself again. I think that's all what any patient needs. It's just to tell them that you love them, you care about them, and you need them in your life.
So it was about 2 weeks from when you first saw him until he was discharged from the hospital. Is that correct?
It's about 8 days, actually. He was
Oh.
discharged on the 9th.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, okay, so when you first saw him, or shortly before you saw him, they were telling you he was in extremely critical condition.
Correct.
Did they say he may not survive?
They told me in a nicer way. They said he is a very high risk of intubation, and I usually ask my regular question: what is his, like, is there any survival rate? Patients like him, did they make it or not? He's young. We all hear like, oh, young people, they won't get it bad, and that was not the case. And we all understand that's like, it's the body reaction, regardless the age. So I kept asking the same question: will he survive? Will he make it? And I told them, like, he is too young. He is very healthy. And the answer I get, he is critical high risk. And when I asked about patients like him, they told me it's different. Some they are improving in a couple days, and unfortunately, some they don't make it.
So in 8 days,
in 8 days,
he went from that very pessimistic outlook to getting out of the hospital.
Correct.
So, okay, you said it was a combination of things, but was there one thing you think had a bigger impact, or was it just everything working together?
Everything working together, definitely, but I think the bigger impact was like, we're here for you. We're here for you. We care about you. This is your family. This is the people, they love you. We know you can fight it, and just don't give up.
So sounds like you think there was a huge psychological factor involved, and I could understand that. It must have been depressing and demoralizing to be alone in a hospital, and then suddenly you get to show up and you can explain things to him and make him comfortable.
I think so. I think so, and just letting him feel like, you know, like there are physical issues. There are, like, he was limited to his bed. In a couple days, he was able to walk around his room. Windows, 2 weeks in the hospital, he had like a huge window in the room. First day I went, I opened that window, sunlight in. He said, oh, I didn't even know I have a window in the room.
Wow.
Those simple things. And that's what I refer to. It's like common sense, you know, like a little sunlight, look at the sky, walk around your room. It's okay. If your oxygen dropped a little bit, it's okay. You're not dying in a couple seconds if your oxygen goes to the 80s. Yes, I understand the concerns from the hospital and the staff and the nurses, and they all worried about our patients. But just tell the patient you didn't die a full day on oxygen lower than 90. I mean, you're not dying because it goes down when you walk around. Go walk around, try to open up your lungs, just encourage your patient to do the best they can. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Put them back in bed and put them on oxygen.
Well, Sam was fortunate that he had a doctor for a wife, because it sounds like you demanded numerous changes once you could once you could see him and were informed, more fully informed. And it sounds like those changes had a huge impact on his recovery. But most of us don't have a doctor in the family that can do that kind of thing. So what advice would you offer to us laymen if we found ourselves in that situation?
Never give up. Never give up. You don't need a doctor to tell you that your family love you. You don't need a doctor to tell you that. Check your patient. Bed sores are obvious out in the skin. Check your patients if they need to shave or to shower or to bed shower. Check if they actually like the diet they are on or what they like to eat. Ask them if they can see you, if they have, when they talk to you, ask them if they are comfortable in their bed, what else you can do to them, and fight for them. Try to see them. You're right to be with your patient. If you would like to risk it, risk it. It's okay. Be with your loved ones and just never give up. There must be a way. And if there is no way, you did your best. You tried your best.
I think that's good advice. Yeah, those are just kind of common sense things, but it's also just asking the patient, what's going on? How are you feeling? What's bothering you?
Just ask them. It's like what my husband, one of the things like the proning, like since he left the hospital, he's proning every single night to the morning, never had issue. His bed is just comfortable. Just make the hospital bed comfortable.
Yeah.
It's not impossible. It's the same. Change the pillows, change the pillows.
But when I first heard your story, or the story of you and Sam, the first thing that entered my mind was how many other people are going through the same type of thing. I mean, and I've heard stories of so many people dying alone. Yeah. And I've wondered, was that necessary? One, that they were alone, but two, could they have been saved if they had someone like you to advocate for them?
And it's same thing that first came to my mind when I was taking my husband home, and actually we were listening to our music in the car, we were singing along. First thing came to my mind, I was wondering, is it the disease, is it the virus itself, or it's the care? I think we're missing on the care part. That's how, at least how I felt, because that's why you take your patient to the hospital, to get treatment and care. And if you get the treatment and you didn't get the care, you're missing on a lot. You're missing on more than 50% of the reason why you're in the hospital. It always would make me wonder, is it just because of the new virus? Is it because we don't know enough about it? Or we just lost so many lives because we were not with our patients? And those who died alone, was there anything else that we could have done for them to save their lives?
Yeah, I certainly don't want to put down the doctors and
Absolutely
other healthcare
not.
professionals, because this has had to have been a terrible burden on them and incredibly stressful.
Absolutely.
But you described several things that were easy to address. You know, having him on a diabetic diet, having him so heavily sedated, misinterpreting his request to be made comfortable. Just those are, it almost, I don't want to, well, I was going to say it sounds incompetent, but I don't know. It just, those were easily corrected situations. And once you did correct them, he improved.
Yeah.
No.
I absolutely agree. They are all amazing. They are working, finding ways to save patients. I can't appreciate them enough and thank them enough of just taking care of our patients. I agree, there are things easy to correct. Maybe just if we give the patient a little more time to ask them, how do they feel? Any difference in their day-to-day? What do they need? Are they in pain? Anything we can do for them? Making small changes and adjustments. I'm sure all people who worked since day one on COVID, they are so burned out, under lots of stress, trying to figure out how to save the lives. They told me themselves when I was in the hospital, they said, every day we grouped, we were trying to do something for Sam, but we didn't know what else we can do. One of the comments, it's like funny comments, now he's okay, can you round with us on the other patients? And I said, all you need to do is what I did. Just ask them how they're doing and open the window for them and change their beds and just do the simple things that we're focusing a lot on the disease and the severity of it and how scary it is. And we're forgetting that our body is amazing and can adjust and work back again. Maybe if we increase the care a little bit or compared to the treatment itself, maybe we'll get a better outcome.
Yeah, it sounds like they look at the patient in kind of a just detached manner. They're a patient, not an actual human being, with all of the needs and requirements of a human being. And if that gets overlooked, well, that sounds like that's the care that you're talking about, are those types of things.
Correct. Simple things, very simple things. If the patient need to shave and look better, to take a selfie, let them do it. If they want to shower, help to shower. Not all patients would like to use catheters and they would like to go to the restroom, help them to go to the restroom. There are simple things that all patients would benefit from. And I totally agree, those are overlooked all the time.
Yeah, your comment about shaving made me chuckle because during the freeze, I had little water, no power, no heat. So I didn't shave for like 4 days and I was going crazy. But it was so great to shave. I actually felt human again. So I can definitely identify with that.
I totally agree. My husband's the same. He's like a clean cut, like he doesn't like anything. He always liked to shave. And because he was on, he's in bed and COVID causes like clots. So they have to put him on heparin, which is like a blood thinner. And that's absolutely like needed. So when you're on blood thinner, they can't help you to shave. So what I did, I dropped off like shaving machines so that you don't have to use just regular razor so you don't cut it. Every single day and night, I ask, can you please help him? He just needs some help to shave. None of that. Finally, one nurse at night helped him and it was just a quick trim more than shave. And the week that I was there, one of the things we did, it's like, hey, let's do shaving day. And he did everything himself. He just needed some help, like handing him things, handing him the machine, grab the mirror, things like simple.
Yeah.
And he felt great after that. And I can see that when you talked about it. Yeah, he felt like, oh my gosh, I'm a new person again.
Yeah. And the shower was even more remarkable, but the shaving was, I seldom go more than a day without shaving.
Yeah.
And so like I said, I can really identify with that. Well, we're about out of time. Do you have any final thoughts or comments you want to make?
Just want to thank you so much for trying to just make our voice heard. And I hope that would help other patients and families to ask questions. Know there are so many resources. Talk to patient advocacy, talk to case management, try to reach out to your patients and request from the hospitals to be patient with us too and try to communicate with the families. Maybe there are something simple you're missing on and that can help help your patient. I'm sure all of them, they were so proud of my husband walking out of the hospital. And I'm sure it's at the end of the day, you're a physician, you're a nurse, you'll be so proud and happy to see your patient survive. And so try to communicate, improving communication. And for those families who lost their loved ones, I feel for you. It's terrible. And just like you guys all are amazing for trying your best. I'm sure you did. And I hope that we all try to get out of this together, and all of this will be memories, but I'm sure the ones who lost their loved ones, it will always be there.
Okay, well, thank you, Zeena. Maybe we'll do this again sometime in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.